Hello guys, what's up and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's me, your girl Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. Welcome again to another Legally Speaking episode. So today's video is going to be about late Miss Iniobong Umoren and her suspected killer, Uduak Akpan. I'm going to be bringing us up to speed with the latest development. I'm sure that it's not news to a lot of us that Mr. Uduak, who had initially admitted guilt and admitted to killing Miss Iniobong, has retracted his statement. And a few days back, it made it out to the news that Mr. Uduak was quoted to have said that he doesn't know who Miss Iniobong is. So we're going to be discussing what the law has to say about this. But before I get into that discussion, let me give you a brief background of this case for those that do not know of it and for those that might have forgotten some parts of it. So on this ill-fated day, on the 27th of April 2021 exactly, that was last year, late Miss Iniobong, a 26-year-old graduate from Akwa Ibom, had taken to her Twitter page to announce that she was in search or in need for a job. Her tweet read, "Please, I am in need of a job. Something to do to keep mind and soul together while contributing dutifully to the organization. My location is Uyo. I'm creative, really good at thinking critically, and most importantly, a fast learner. CV available on request." Shortly after she made that publication, she got a response. A response that would have made her heart leap for joy. A response that seemed like answered prayers. But in reality, that response will spiral to a chain of events that would eventually lead to her losing her life. This response came from a Twitter handle called Miracle Papa. He replied that he had a job opening, a job offering for the position of a secretary in an engineering firm right there in Uyo, and that she was to apply in person at a particular location. That Twitter account, we would later discover, belonged to one Uduak Akpan, a man who is suspected to and stands accused of murdering Iniobong. Shortly after making that invitation, Mr. Akpan quickly deleted his tweet. But late Miss Iniobong didn't attach much importance to it. Perhaps she could have thought that he didn't want other job-thirsty people to swarm at him. It is also very possible that she didn't even notice that he had deleted that tweet. So young, witty Miss Iniobong, a fresh graduate from the University of Akwa Ibom, she needed a job so badly she had burnt the midnight candle and graduated with a 4.1 CPGA at school from philosophy. That fancy job that every graduate in Nigeria dreams of was not forthcoming. The economic realities were biting hard at her, and she knew that she just needed something that she could keep body and soul together with. She wanted to have an honorable means of living. She was unsuspecting of what was about to befall her. So she honored the invite. Fortunately, very, very fortunately, I must add, late Miss Iniobong had informed her friend and her sister of where she was going to. And she had informed them that some guy on Twitter invited her for a job interview, for a job opportunity. She gave them the location of where she was going to. So when Iniobong didn't return home that evening from the interview, her friend and family got suspicious and raised alarm. And the search for Miss Iniobong began. When the reports that the whereabouts of Miss Iniobong is unknown made it to the internet and to the public, Akpan Frank quickly changed his Twitter name from Miracle Papa, which was the name he used in inviting and luring Iniobong for this Hawks job interview, to Megabytes. But alas, it was too late. A huge buzz had already been created on the internet, on Twitter, everywhere, and people were digging deep and doing their background check. And luck ran out on him. His true identity, both on Twitter and on Facebook, were unraveled and published. And everybody began to tag all law enforcement agencies, all security operatives. The internet went into a frenzy. You see, social media is a very, very powerful tool. Very powerful. And if people understand how much they can derive from the internet, from social media, they would make better use of it. So while the identity of Mr. Frank Akpan was made public, girls started coming out to give their own experience and account of the fate they have suffered in his hands, on how he lures them to his house, rapes them, steals from them, disposes them of their valuables, in the pretense that there is a job opportunity for them. One particular Twitter user even published something like a house, the gates where he usually lures his victims to. So everything was out there in the open. And when Mr. Uduak Akpan Frank saw that it was game over for him, he quickly deactivated both his Facebook and his Twitter accounts and took to his heels. With all the information made available by Twitter detectives, it seemed like more than half of the police's job was already done or taken care of. So the police swung into action, traced the house, busted into it, met Uduak's absence, of course. Remember that he had escaped. They did a thorough search on the property and they discovered the remains of late Iniobong buried in a shallow grave in the compound. Further post-mortem examinations would reveal that late Miss Iniobong was not only murdered, but she was raped before the murder was carried out. So back to the story. When they arrived, Uduak Akpan was nowhere to be found, so they swung in and arrested his father, exhumed the corpse from the shallow grave, and after their preliminary investigations, they released the corpse to the family of Miss Iniobong. She has since been buried. So while in custody, Uduak's father cooperated with the authorities. He collaborated with the DPO to lure Uduak back to Uyo, which they succeeded in doing. And as soon as he got into Uyo, he was arrested by the police. Now pay attention to this part, because this part of this video will form the crux of what we're going to be discussing in this video. It will form the crux of the whole video. So when Uduak was taken into custody, he made a very, very chilling confession. Listen.
Let us know what happened on that day.
What happened was that she came for a supposed job interview, which I used reverse psychology on her. I asked her that she can work in a farm where hard drugs are kept. I asked her whether she can work in a farm where hard drugs are kept as a secretary, and she said that she can, that she's ready to do the job. So when she came, I revealed to her that this farm doesn't exist. There's no farm like that. It was just a hoax. Let me put it that way. So then I told her that before she leaves, that I would like to have sex with her, and she agreed. But she gave a condition that I should use a condom, which I did. And while I removed the condom, she became furious and she took the nearby stabilizer to hit me on my head, and then she hit my left ring finger and tried to reach for the hole, screaming, tried to reach for the hole. So while I was bleeding, in a bit to stop her, I used the stabilizer to tap. And when I hit her, she fell and started bleeding. Then after she died.
So where did she hit you?
On my phone. Where is the wound?
In addition to all he had said, he also confessed to have lured no fewer than 6 other victims and raped them under the guise of trying to get them a job. He also said that Iniobong was the first victim that he had ever killed. I don't know if it's just me, but I can sniff from a distance and pick plenty of holes from Mr. Uduak Akpan's story. Personally, I do not think that late Miss Iniobong accepted to have sex with Uduak. I also do not think that Miss Iniobong was the first to have started assaulting Akpan. What I think and what I suspect is that Akpan had succeeded in luring her into the building. He had tried to start raping her as he usually does. Maybe he must have threatened her with a weapon, because of course he films his victims. Don't forget that the victim that came out on Twitter to give her own account of the story said that Akpan threatened to blackmail her if she didn't keep shut about that incident. How does a man blackmail a woman that he has had sex with? Of course it is not by verbal accounts. It is by pictorial or video evidence of what has happened. So for Mr. Akpan to successfully rape and threaten blackmailing his victims, he obviously uses a weapon to get them to cooperate, and he obviously have videos or pictures of them in that act. And threatening to release pictures or videos of them naked is the only way he may have gotten them to keep quiet. So my suspicion is that Mr. Akpan had tried to rape and video Iniobong and she had resisted. So he resorted to violence, got his way with her, and still killed her. But we would let the courts be the final judge of what happened. What is also not so hard to notice is the total contempt and lack of remorse displayed by Akpan. He almost didn't seem bothered. He almost seemed covered, like nothing can happen. There was no regret, there was no remorse, there was no fear, there was no, he was very confident. Even the inscription on his t-shirt said it all. He was nonchalant, like as though he was just accused of calling someone an idiot. That was very hard to watch. I mean, a man that had taken the life of another person, acting like his beauty sleep just got interrupted and he had to get on with the interview and go do other important things. That's crazy. So having written a confessional statement at the police station and even backed it up with a public video confession and went further in courts to plead guilty to the charges, I'm sure everybody, a layman out there, would heave a sigh and say, finally, it's easy. This case is done. Just hand him over his sentence and let us move on to the next one. But that was not what was about to happen. So it came as a big and rude shock to everyone when Uduak's defense was open in court. And he made a shocking U-turn, a 360-degree U-turn on all the confessions he has made. Let me read out what he now says. At the High Court, on Wednesday, April the 16th, Uduak Akpan said, "My lord, I do not know Miss Iniobong Umoren. I only came to know that name when I was served with the proceedings of this trial at the prison. For the second charge of rape, my lord, I do not know anything about rape. I have never raped anybody. I pleaded guilty because I had fever on that day and my IPO influenced my pleading guilty." Wonderful. Wonders shall never end. So legally speaking, what is the implication of this retraction of guilt, of this turn around, this U-turn that suspected killer Uduak Akpan just took? Is Uduak legally allowed to say the opposite of what he has already confessed to? Is his initial confessional statements enough to convict him? Is the court supposed to disregard this second plea of not guilty and not knowing Iniobong as an afterthought and convict him on his initial confession? What is the position of the law? What is the fate of this case? Is there any chance in the world that late Miss Iniobong would get justice? Well, the answer would very well shock you. Sadly, yes, Mr. Uduak Akpan is within his legal rights to do what he did. He is totally permitted by law to plead not guilty even after writing a statement of guilt, despite writing and giving a video account indicting him and admitting guilt. Let me explain briefly. When an accused person is brought before the courts, there's something that is called plea taking. So this person is docked. There's this small box in the court. We call it the dock. The accused person approaches and enters the dock, and the court registrar reads the charges to the person in a language that he or she understands. When the charges are read to this accused person, the accused person will now be made to take a plea of either guilty or not guilty. To the layman, once an accused person pleads guilty, Otito, the case is over. Just take him from there straight to prison, sentence him immediately. So you may think, but that is not the process. There are other procedures that must be fulfilled even after a plea of guilty has been taken. And in the course of these proceedings that are bound to happen before an accused person is sentenced, that person has the right legally to withdraw his guilty plea and replace it with a not guilty plea. He has a right to change his mouth, as we put it, retract the plea of guilty and hold that he's not guilty, so the trial can commence. And if a court refuses to recognize that change of plea and judgment is given when an accused person has changed his plea and the court refuses to take account as to that change, any judgment that is obtained under this circumstance will be null and void, will be cancelled, will be overturned during appeal, and the court will be made to resit the whole case and a retrial will be ordered. So legally, yes, he has a right to change his mouth. And even the confessional statements that he made at the police station when he was arrested will be thrown out of the window the second it is shown that it was obtained out of duress or threat or force or apprehension of harm or danger. So what does this mean in a nutshell? It means that the prosecution would have to work extra hard to prove his case beyond reasonable doubt. And that is the only way that the courts can pin Mr. Uduak. If not, there is nothing the court can do. The truth might be in your head. You might have knowledge, you might have the gut feeling, you might have the morality to assume the truth. But if the facts in the case in courts do not show same, no conviction can be arrived at. So the prosecution has to work really hard to prove that Mr. Akpan Uduak indeed murdered Miss Iniobong. The law says that anybody who is accused of a crime is innocent until proven guilty. Innocent even if you find the corpse in his house. Innocent even if you find the murder weapon in his hands. Innocent until the prosecution proves his case beyond reasonable doubt and a conviction is secured. And let us not forget that the rationale of the law is that it is better for 9 guilty people or 10 guilty people to go scot-free than for one innocent person to be made to serve a jail term when he didn't commit the crime. So the burden, the onus to prove is not on the accused person. Mr. Uduak Akpan, by law, it is not in his place to prove his innocence. Rather, it is the prosecution's duty to prove the guilt of Mr. Akpan. And that guilt must be proven beyond reasonable doubt. And that, my dear brothers and sisters, is the position of the law. So let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section. Just as I promised you, I would bring to you reality, facts, law, morals, gossip, and all of it. I'll bring it to you raw, and you're at liberty to share in the comments what your thoughts are. What I have brought to you is the facts and the law. What has happened to Miss Iniobong is totally painful. It hurts differently. It's not like anybody deserves to die, but assuming Miss Iniobong had gone out for prostitution or runs or hookup, people would have blamed her and say, oh, she was living a wayward life. But what can you say of a young enterprising lady who had gone out to search for a source of living? Did she deserve to die in that fashion? Another thing to learn from this story is the importance of carrying somebody along when you're going out, regardless of where you're going to. Even if you're just taking a walk or a drive down the street, let there be another person aside from you that knows your whereabouts. They come, no be destination. It will just take 5 minutes, I'll be back. No be destination. Assuming Iniobong's sister and friend didn't have an idea of where she was, perhaps this crime would have been covered and more of it would have continued. Iniobong informing her relations of her whereabouts was the anvil that cracked this case. So it's not about I'm too grown, I'm now an adult. Why am I being checkmated? Why must my parents want to know where I am? No. In your interest, in your safety, for your security, it is always important that somebody else knows where you're going to, where you are at every point in time. Nobody prays for evil, but you never can tell. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you're new here, give this video a big thumbs up and drop all your thoughts in the comment section. It's me, your girl, Barrister Neze, and this is Nezeville. I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye.